Live from the PeopleForward Network podcast studio at CultureCon in Madison, Wisconsin, this Fringe episode was created to help you grow your perspective around culture and meaningful work. CultureCon believes that every individual, regardless of role, has the power to make work more meaningful for themselves and their organization. Now, here's some inspiration straight from the amazing leaders and workplaces within the CultureCon community.
Hey, it's Nikki, Llewellyn Gregory, and back in Madison, Wisconsin at CultureCon 2024. And right now I'm sitting down with Michelle Naples. She's the Chief Integration Officer at Lutheran Social Services of Wisconsin and Upper Michigan. Michelle, I know you're a repeat visitor at CultureCon, and I want to know about that. We're going to talk about it. But before that, Chief Integration Officer is a different title. I don't feel like I know other Chief Integration Officers. Tell me more about where did this come from and what you do.
Yeah, it is a pretty unique title. I have not run into anyone else with that same title. And for me, it is a responsibility of different business services departments. So I work with human resources, IT, communications, and performance and quality improvement, key business services areas for our organization. It's aligning and activating people, processes, and technology to help our colleagues do the important work that they do.
Love that. Integrated as a core title function. I mean, I think so many times companies operate in silos with, teams that work on different initiatives, and it's like, I don't even know what they do over there. So cheers to creating an innovative title. And I just encourage more people. It's like, sometimes we don't even know what the titles mean. They're like, well, we've been doing this for decades. So cheers to you all for creating something based on like the core of what matters. Before we go into our topic today, which is around servant leadership, and I really do love this topic, and I know different people have different takes on it, so I can't wait to hear yours. You're a repeat visitor at CultureCon. Can you give a little history? How did you get to CultureCon? Like, what makes it different? What made you want to come back?
Yeah, I came last year around this time to the same conference, and I heard about it because I knew one of the founders, Nick Lombardino, who I had met in a leadership group. And I was really inspired by his passion for his work. And some time passed, and I came across a post that he had on LinkedIn, and it was all about this CultureCon conference. And that is what my work is really centered around within my organization, and wanted to check it out. It was just down the road. And it was one of the best conferences I've ever been to. Myself and another colleague came last year, and this year we're 5 strong. I brought my friends along with me, other colleagues who also care a lot about our culture.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would say the thing that stands out for me as a first timer, but for the past 9 months, spending time with Nick and Zach, the relationship priority here. Everyone is here based on a shared focus of building stronger workplace cultures, being better leaders. We're all on that journey, but there's a lot of organizations that do similar work. The difference here is this just organic connection. The first night we were here for the innovation kickoff, and a friend of mine that wasn't here said, "Did you meet anybody?" I was like, didn't meet anybody, like 15 people. Like, so naturally, it wasn't like I was around like, here's my business card. I didn't bring business cards, but, just naturally meeting people. What's the one thing that stands out to you that makes it different?
Yeah, it was the connections last year, and just the energy in the room. When people talk about culture here, they're talking about all the specific ways that they're doing it and what it means in their organizations and companies, and it's infectious.
I love that.
The energy.
I love that. Well, I love your energy here in the PeopleForward Network studio on site. So when we talked before to prep, I had asked you a question around, what really matters to you, or something that you would really feel convicted to teach and share. And the topic of servant leadership came up. I love this topic, but I also know that it's, different to different people. So first of all, what is servant leadership to you?
Servant leadership to me is a purpose-driven culture where colleagues lead through service to others. And that's how we're organized within our organization. We are a people-serving organization. We serve nearly 30,000 individuals a year facing significant barriers in their lives. And it's important that our colleagues, and we call them colleagues, that's important to us, that's intentional. We don't have staff at Lutheran Social Services, we have colleagues. We serve one another in the important work that our colleagues do in touching lives and helping others remove barriers in their lives.
I love that. The power of verbiage. You guys are on a trend. Your title,
what
you call people, right? But it's really important, the way we name things. All right. So when it comes to servant leadership and then your organization, Lutheran Social Services of Wisconsin and Upper Michigan, it's a way of being, it's part of your purpose. Like, how is this lived out inside of the organization? Give us some examples of some initiatives.
Yes. So, although it may seem trite, we lean in on our values, and the one that comes to mind first and foremost for us is compassion. And that really is how we serve one another. We know each other as individuals and take the time to seek to understand, and that's within all aspects of what we do. And that's so important for the work that we do with those that we serve in the community as well. And so specific initiatives, I would say, in focusing on the needs of our colleagues of one another is, what does well-being mean to us? We have a well-being committee, for example, and they did a survey around what does wellness mean to you across different dimensions, what's most important to you. And so as a result of that, this year we introduced the Calm Wellness app. All colleagues and their families now have access to that. We also have put on mindfulness courses for those who are interested. Each week in their inbox would show up an email with some simple things that they could do to embed mindfulness into their daily lives, into their own schedules in ways that made sense for them. And it's also at a social services organization like mine, it is really understanding how to communicate well with others. And for example, we have a training around trauma-informed care that all of our colleagues have to take. And trauma-informed care is really about understanding, how to respond to others' trauma and be able to create safe spaces and relationships and foster health and well-being. But it's not just our client-facing colleagues who have to take that training. It's all of our colleagues. So as I told you, I oversee all business services, or many of the business services departments, human resources, IT, quality, communications. All of our colleagues in those areas also are trained in trauma-informed care, because all of us are people in our own lives, and this is relevant to our own personal lives as well as working with our colleagues and coworkers, just around when you're calling the IT help desk, that can be a stressful situation, and it's all about how do you just relate to one another in ways that are helpful.
That's awesome. I love the example of the trauma-informed care as one of the programs that then really helps you to live out servant leadership, teaching all of your people how to do this together and in a uniform way. Let's go back to core values of your company and maybe pick one. And I'd love for you to demonstrate that lived out inside of the organization, sharing, this core value, how it aligns with servant leadership, but then how you help your people live that out.
Yes. So compassion was one of those core values that really speaks to servant leadership. Our other core values are courage, co-creation, and change. I'll also speak to co-creation, and that is understanding that all of our colleagues have so much wisdom and experience and expertise and passion to bring to the table, and we need to listen and learn from one another. And so that looks different in different initiatives. And what we do organization-wide, for example, is we ask for ideas. What are your ideas about how to live into our strategic pillars? And I won't go into all of those, but what are your ideas for how we can move the needle on being a workplace of choice, for example? And there's a application to fill out, and then a scoring process, a discussion, and we will determine which of those we want to move forward with in the new year. So it's really having a voice in what things we need as an organization to deliver on those pillars.
I love the idea of co-creation, because I feel like it is an opportunity for everyone to feel that they have a voice and that others want to hear their voice. And I think there's different components to that. One is helping to make them feel comfortable to speak up. Another is that they feel like others heard them and they feel valued. And then what's done with my idea? Not that we have to use all of the ideas. So I was just curious, any of the magic that you all do to really bring co-creation to life, is there a practice there that you would love to share with our listeners on how they could do that better?
Yeah, I think one helpful thing that we do that contributes to an environment where people want to bring forth ideas and feel comfortable doing so is we have what we call courageous conversations. And that is where we talk about how to have conversations. And so what are some team agreements around having a specific conversation around a topic where there's different perspectives. We all bring a different voice to the table. And so creating a culture around, we're used to having these types of conversations, and I can say what I say and think differently, and I'm sharing from my own experiences, and I'm interested to hear what different thoughts you might have on that. And so that's something where I wouldn't say like we are like the best in the world at doing that. We are intentional about trying to do that and learning from doing that and bringing in more topics and bringing in different audiences. So that creates just an environment where ideas are heard and shared. And so when it comes time to offer up an idea for improving the company in terms of results and the impact that we have, then I might be more willing to put forth my idea because I know that we're really tuned to listening to each other and know that we all have something to bring to the table.
Well, and just setting the norm or setting the tone within the organization that we have courageous conversations, right? Where it becomes a thing repeated over and over so that it's not something like this one-off thing, but, maybe the next one, someone doesn't have something to say, but down the road, it's like, I know this is coming, and it's a norm within the organization with it, which I think is great. Curious how you hold others accountable to servant leadership in the organization, like when actions and behaviors aren't illustrating that, like what does it look like to hold people accountable?
Well, the values are embedded within our performance management system. That's how we define, the areas of what at the end of the year and throughout the year, of course, that we're talking about and how have we lived up to these values and what are examples where you've excelled at that and where is room for improvement. Part of the courageous conversations is being able to call out when behavior doesn't match or align with our values. So that's, important to do and an area we are continuing to grow in. I would also say we also recognize when we see servant leadership values being upheld and celebrate that. So we have a servant leader award program and colleagues nominate one another when they see, you're living our value of change and here's how you're doing that. And then that becomes a company-wide celebration at the end of the year. And colleagues get to vote on the all-around servant leader based on all of the different nominations throughout the year.
Oh, that's awesome. Is that the main recognition program that you all do?
Yeah, there's that. And there's also informal servant leadership recognition that you could just give a colleague a card that says, hey, I saw you doing this and that was awesome. Or, that meant a lot to me.
Can you think of a person inside your organization or outside your organization that just models the way for servant leadership, and maybe just give us examples of like you looking up to this person because of these actions that they take regularly? Like what are some of those things that you see in that person with them showing up consistently as a servant leader?
Well, I have to call out our CEO, Dr. Cologne. He models servant leadership. I've had the privilege of working with him over a number of years. And he is a truly humble leader. He's not afraid to show his emotion in talking with colleagues. He uses the word love. He tells everyone, like, I love you guys. He lifts everyone up at every chance he gets. He listens before speaking. He holds space for others to share their feelings. I could go on and on. It's a large organization. We have about large-ish for social services anyway. We have about 800 employees, and they're throughout the state of Wisconsin and Upper Michigan. And whenever he's traveling for different purposes, he wants to go and walk in the shoes of our colleagues and understand what their day-to-day looks like and really listen and understand what the work they do is and share how important an impact their work has on the individuals and families that they serve. So he's there to understand and lift up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Walking in their shoes, like doing the work alongside.
Yeah.
And then you had mentioned something about like transparency or vulnerability, something when you were describing.
Yeah.
What does that look like lived out? Like, is there a story that you remember that he shared? Not that we have to get into too much. You don't have to share anything beyond anything you feel comfortable, but just share what does that look like?
Well, last week, he was reading a board report that we put together around what has happened in the last quarter. And he wrote an email to the executive team and said, I just have to say I welled up with tears reading this report because I was just so humbled by the impact that we've made in this past quarter on every front. And just he thought to share that. So, that's a recent example, just making you feel like your work is really important and it matters. So,
yeah, and to read an email that elicits emotion.
Yeah.
Right? Through just reading that. You're like, yeah, making that connection. That's awesome. Well, I'd love for you to leave our listeners today with a challenge when it comes to servant leadership. People see that in different ways. I mean, I think there's a common thread that all of us would believe is true, but some of us act out servant leadership in different ways. What's a challenge that you'd like to leave to, ask them to do some homework or reflection exercise? Or
I love that. This may be a little bit of a shift, but I shared with you earlier, my role is overseeing what I call business services. And a lot of times in organizations, those areas are seen as overhead. And my challenge to the listeners is, if you ever feel yourself talking about overhead, maybe put a quarter in that swear jar. Because for me, overhead denotes that you are a cost on the business, or you are, a drag on resources, and you take away from doing the mission work or the profit from the organization. And really, it takes everyone to bring their expertise to the table, and all employees and colleagues are part of the ultimate deliverable, if you will, in our case, serving people. And I really have a passion around no one colleague is worth more than another in terms of the impact on our clients. And that's really consistent with servant leadership. So that's my takeaway. So think about how you think about all individuals in your organization, the contributions that they make.
That's so good. There's a theme within our entire conversation. I think it came up 4 times and ended with the overhead. The words we use are really powerful. From how you title someone to be an empowering title, right? That's really meaningful, down to sometimes overlooking how we use the word overhead and how that makes somebody feel. Yep. Well, thank you so much. Hope to see you for your year 3 back at CultureCon 2025. And thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you. Appreciate the conversation.